I worked at a small diner in Columbus, Ohio for almost 6 years, the kind of place with laminated menus and a pie case by the register and regulars who come in so often you stop writing down their orders. My shift was Tuesday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., breakfast and lunch crowd. In all that time, the most consistent regular we had was a man named Walter. He came in every single weekday morning without exception. Same table, corner booth by the window. Same order, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, orange juice. He tipped exactly 15% every time, which I know because I eventually started calculating it in my head as a game. Walter was probably in his mid-70s, thin, always in a collared shirt, always with a folded newspaper that he never seemed to actually read. He was polite in the way that very private people are polite, friendly on the surface, but with a kind of boundary around him that you didn't cross. We talked about the weather, about the food, occasionally about local sports, never about anything real. I knew almost nothing about his life. He wore a wedding ring. That was all I had. After about a year of this routine, I noticed something. Walter always came in alone, but every morning before he touched his food, he would look out the window for a long moment, just stare out at the street, very still, for maybe 30 seconds. Then he'd refold his newspaper, pick up his fork, and eat, every single morning, like a ritual. I mentioned it once to my co-worker Diane, who had worked there longer than me. "Oh, Walter," she said, like that explained everything. "He used to come in with his wife. Every morning, both of them, for I don't know how many years. She passed away about 18 months before you started. And he still comes in, every day," she said. "Same table, same order, hers too at first. Ordered both breakfasts for about a month after she died." Then he stopped. I didn't say anything to Walter about it. That wasn't the kind of relationship we had. But I started paying more attention. I noticed that he always sat on the same side of the booth, the side facing the door, not the window side. And every morning across from him, the other coffee cup was always placed upside down on its saucer by the busser, the universal signal for no coffee needed. But Walter never asked us to move it or take it away. Winter came. Walter's routine didn't change. He was there when there was a blizzard warning. He was there the morning after the big ice storm that kept most of Columbus inside. I watched him walk in that day in his heavy coat, shaking snow off his hat, and settle into the corner booth like he was clocking in. "You didn't have to come out in this," I told him. "Habit," he said simply, and opened his newspaper. I worked that diner for 2 more years after that conversation. Then I moved, changed jobs, lost touch with that whole chapter of my life. I thought about Walter sometimes, just as one of those quiet peripheral people who shape the texture of your days without either of you fully realizing it. Last spring I was back in Columbus visiting my sister, and on a whim I drove past the old diner. It was still there. I went in. Different staff. Same laminated menus, same pie case. I sat at the counter and ordered coffee and looked over at the corner booth by the window. Walter was there, same colored shirt, folded newspaper. 2 coffee cups. One upright, one upside down. He looked older, smaller somehow, the way people get. But when he glanced up and saw me, he nodded. The careful nod of someone who remembers a face but is being cautious about saying so. I went over. We talked for a few minutes. He remembered my name, which surprised me. Before I left, I couldn't help it. I asked, "Walter, why do you still come here? Every day?" He looked at me, then at the empty seat across from him, then back at me. "Because this is where we were happy," he said. "And I don't want to forget what that felt like." I walked out to my car and sat there for a while before I could drive. I looked up the diner's old review page that night. Second review from 2009, posted by a user named M. Kowalski. "Best breakfast in Columbus. My husband and I have been coming here for 11 years. The eggs are perfect, and the coffee is always hot. We'll never stop coming." The profile photo was a woman in her 60s, smiling, in a corner booth by a window. The upvote count was 1. Posted by Walter, I assume, from a second account, just so her words would exist somewhere.
This happened 3 years ago, and I still think about it whenever I need to be reminded that sometimes the universe is just messing with you. I had just moved to a new city, Austin, Texas, for a job. I didn't know anyone. I'd found an apartment online, moved in with 3 suitcases and a box of kitchen stuff, and was spending my first Saturday trying to feel like an adult who had his life together. I went to the grocery store, I unpacked, I assembled a bookshelf with only 2 screws left over, which I chose to interpret as a good sign. Around 7 in the evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a woman standing in the hallway, mid-50s, very put together, holding a foil-covered casserole dish and beaming at me like I was someone she'd been expecting. "You must be the new neighbor," she said. "I'm Patricia from 4B. I made a chicken and rice casserole. I always do this when someone new moves in. Welcome to the building." Now I was 27, new in town, had eaten a granola bar for lunch, and someone was handing me a home-cooked meal. I said thank you approximately 4 times, took the casserole, and Patricia told me to keep the dish and come knock on 4B anytime if I needed anything. It was one of the nicest things that had happened to me in months. I ate half the casserole for dinner. It was genuinely excellent. The next morning, Sunday, there was another knock at my door. Different woman this time, also mid-50s, also holding food on orkikkinspun, a loaf of banana bread wrapped in a dish towel, also beaming. Hi there. I'm Donna from 4A. Patricia told me we had a new neighbor. I wanted to say welcome. I accepted the banana bread. We chatted for a few minutes. Donna told me the building was very friendly, that there was a kind of informal tradition of looking out for each other, that I should come to the rooftop barbecue they did every summer. Monday I went to work. When I got home that evening, there was a small cactus in a terracotta pot sitting in front of my door with a note. Every home needs a plant. From 4C, Gary. I had not met Gary. Gary had apparently decided this didn't matter. By the end of my first week, I had received 2 casseroles, a banana bread, the cactus, a bottle of wine from a young couple, and 3A, a handwritten list of the best places to eat within walking distance from an older man named Howard who lived below me, and an invitation to a book club that met in the lobby on the third Thursday of each month. I was overwhelmed in the best possible way. I had stumbled into the friendliest apartment building in the continental United States. About a month in, I was in the elevator with Patricia, and I told her genuinely that moving here had been intimidating, but that the building had made it so much easier, and that the way everyone had welcomed me was something I'd never experienced before. Patricia smiled, then looked slightly puzzled. "That's so sweet," she said. "Though I have to say we don't usually do all of that for everyone. Well, you looked so young and lost when I saw you moving in, and I mentioned it to Donna, and then I suppose it spread." "That's really kind," I said. "Where are you from originally?" "Seattle," I said. Patricia stared at me. "Seattle," she repeated slowly. "And you're on the 4th floor?" "4D, yeah." Long pause. "Honey," she said carefully, "we thought you were Kevin's nephew." "Kevin in 4E, he mentioned his nephew was moving to Austin and might stop by. We assumed you were him." I was not Kevin's nephew. I had never heard of Kevin. I had just moved into an apartment building where one man's offhand comment had accidentally caused an entire floor of strangers to adopt a random 27-year-old from Seattle. I met Kevin that weekend. He thought the whole thing was hilarious. His actual nephew eventually moved to Austin 6 months later and lives in a different building entirely, which I feel slightly bad about. I've now lived in 4D for 3 years. I go to the book club. I went to the rooftop barbecue. Last Christmas, I made cookies and left them outside every door on floors 3 and 4. Patricia still calls me her accidental neighbor. I still have Gary's cactus. It's thriving. I think about how different my first year in the city would have been if I'd just looked slightly less lost moving in that Saturday. Sometimes the right life finds you by accident.
I need to start by saying that when I tell this story, I am aware of how it sounds at the beginning. Please stay with me until the end. My wife Claire and I have been married for 9 years. We have a house in a suburb outside of Denver, 2 kids, 8 and 11, and the kind of steady, unglamorous, genuinely good life that I am grateful for every day. We don't have drama. We're not those people. So when I started noticing things, I want you to understand I was not looking for problems. I was not a jealous husband scanning for evidence of betrayal. I was a person who noticed things that didn't add up and couldn't stop his brain from adding them up anyway. It started in March. Claire mentioned she was staying late at work on a Tuesday. Okay. She does that sometimes. She's a project manager at an architecture firm. Late nights happen. But when she got home, she seemed different. Not guilty different, not secretive. More like quietly energized, like someone who's just had an important conversation. I didn't say anything. But a week later, it happened again. And then a third time. Then I noticed the mileage. I know this sounds bad. I'm not a mileage checker by nature, but our car had been making a noise and I'd been monitoring it. And one Thursday, I noticed that Claire's car had significantly more miles on it than a round trip to her office would explain. Not a lot more. Maybe 15, 20 extra miles, but consistently. I didn't want to be the kind of husband who installs tracking software or hires someone. I'm not that person. But I was aware of a low hum of anxiety that had set up residence in the back of my mind, and I couldn't make it stop. One evening, I asked her, as casually as I could manage, how work was going. Really good, actually, she said, and she said it with that same quiet energy. There's a lot happening. Anything you want to talk about? She looked at me for just a moment, a fraction of a second, and said, not yet, soon. Not yet, soon. I'm not proud of what I did next. That Saturday, when Claire said she was running errands, I offered to drive. She said no, she was fine. She had a couple of stops to make. I said, okay. And then I drove a different route to the same general area of town, telling myself I was just going to the hardware store. I spotted her car parked outside a building I didn't recognize. A low commercial building off a side street. No signage I could read from the road. She was nowhere in sight. She'd already gone in. I went to the hardware store. I drove home. I said nothing. The following Tuesday, Claire asked me if I was free on Saturday afternoon. I said yes. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table with the look of someone about to give a presentation they've been rehearsing. Okay, she said. I have to tell you something. I was going to wait until I was sure, but I think I'm sure enough. My stomach dropped approximately 3 floors. I've been taking classes, she said, for the past 2 months, architecture licensing. I'm finally doing it. I've wanted to for years, and I kept putting it off, and I was afraid to tell you because I didn't want to get your hopes up in case I gave up, and also because she hesitated. Because I wanted something that was mine, just for a little while, before it became ours. Does that make sense? I looked at her. She kept talking. The Tuesday nights are a study group. There are 4 of us. We meet at this woman Linda's office. She passed the exam last year, and she's basically tutoring us. The extra mileage is because I keep driving the long way back, because I think better in the car, and I've been reviewing material out loud like an insane person. She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a registration confirmation. 2 months ago. The exam is in June, she said. I think I'm going to pass. I said nothing for a long moment. You drove the long way back, I finally said, reviewing architecture material out loud. Every time, she said, and she looked slightly embarrassed. I do voices for the different building codes. I started laughing. I couldn't stop. She looked alarmed, and then she started laughing too, and I told her what I'd been thinking for the past 2 months. All of it, including the hardware store detour. And by the end of it, we were both crying a little. The good kind. She passed the exam in June. First try. There's a framed certificate in our hallway now. Sometimes when I walk past it, I think about how close I came to asking the wrong question and breaking something that was never broken. She still drives the long way home sometimes. I asked her once what building code she was doing voices for when she passed. She said it was fire egress requirements. She did, apparently, a very convincing exit sign,